I spent that whole day feeling sluggish. In the morning, I picked up a black coffee and a bagel, then went straight back home and curled up on the couch to watch movies. The weather was perfect. Sunlight filtered through the trees in the backyard, casting a warm patch of light across the living room floor. I didn't feel like moving and definitely didn't plan on seeing anyone. A little after 2 in the afternoon, I heard a few knocks at the door. At first, I ignored them, figuring it was a delivery. But the knocking didn't sound like someone dropping off a package and leaving. It got heavier each time. I dragged myself off the couch, shuffled to the door in my fuzzy slippers, and looked through the peephole. There was a man outside, standing with his back to me, wearing an ordinary grey jacket, his face turned away. He was holding some kind of paper bag and kept glancing up and down the street, like he was waiting for someone. I called out through the door, "Can I help you?" He turned when he heard me, an uncertain smile on his face. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Jennifer. Does she live here?" I shook my head. "You've got the wrong house." He stared at the crack of the door and asked again, "You're not Jennifer?" "No, I live alone." My voice was starting to get annoyed. He looked down at the bag in his hand, as if debating whether to say more. Finally, he mumbled, "Would you mind if I come in and wait for her? She said she'd meet me here to pick something up." I didn't open the door. I just took a deep breath. There's no one else here. "Please leave." He didn't respond. He just stood there, through the peephole. I watched him set the paper bag down by his feet, stick both hands into his jacket pockets, and scan my driveway, my windows, then my neighbor's yard. Suddenly, a chill crawled up my spine. This didn't feel like a mistake. He wasn't lost. He was here on purpose. I double-locked the door and tugged on it twice to be sure. Then I backed into the living room and grabbed my phone, pretending to make a call. Before I could finish dialing, he started knocking again. Harder this time. "Miss, can you hear me? I just need to wait for someone." His voice turned sticky and slow, each word drawn out. "If you don't open up, I'm afraid Jennifer won't find me when she comes back." I didn't answer. Instead, I dialed my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Miller. She loved gossip more than anyone. She picked up right away. I whispered, "Mrs. Miller, there's a weird man at my door. He won't leave. Can you take a look?" She practically shouted through the phone, Where? Hold on. I'm looking now." Within seconds, I heard her dog barking from her yard. The man heard it too. He glanced toward her house, bent down to pick up the bag, and shot one last look at my door. He murmured, "I'll come back for you later," just loud enough for me to catch through the peephole. I didn't dare relax. Peeking through the blinds, I watched him walk to the curb, then circle behind a white van parked a few houses down. There was another person inside the van, barely visible. They spoke quietly for a moment. The van stayed put, engine off, lights off, just sitting there. Mrs. Miller muttered into the phone, "I see him. He's not leaving. So suspicious. Should I call the police for you?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's see if he goes away." After hanging up, I wondered if I was just being paranoid. But when I turned back to the door, I saw the paper bag still sitting there on my porch. He'd left it behind on purpose. I wanted to pick it up, but was too scared to open the door. I crouched by the window, hoping maybe the neighbor's kid would come by so I could ask him to get rid of it. Before I could figure it out, the doorbell rang. I jumped so hard I landed on the carpet. It rang again and again, each chime sharp and deliberate, like he was daring me to open up. I pressed my ear to the door. He didn't say a word, didn't knock, just kept ringing the bell, again and again. After about 10 times, it finally stopped. I held my breath, my palms slick with sweat. Then I heard it, the faint rustle of plastic dragging across the porch. He was pushing the bag right up to the door with his foot. I bent down to the tiny gap at the bottom, and saw the bag almost pressed against the threshold. I muttered under my breath, "Freak." I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a butcher knife, and clenched the handle, knowing damn well it wouldn't help much if it came down to it. I thought about calling the cops, but was terrified I'd be overreacting. Outside, that white van still hadn't moved. Now and then, I'd see the figure inside leaning forward to watch my house. Time stretched unbearably long. The front stayed quiet. I crept to the back door and peeked through the fence toward the street. The van was still there, just parked at the corner like a predator waiting in the dark. My head felt light. I set the knife down on the dining table and gulped some water. Just as I lowered the glass, I heard the back door knob turn. The sound was unmistakable. Someone testing the lock. A short, strangled sound escaped my throat before I bolted over and deadbolted the back door. The knob jiggled once, twice, then stopped, as if whoever was there gave up. I heard footsteps crunching the dry leaves in the yard, moving away, step by step. Peeking through the kitchen blinds, I saw him circling back around to the front. He looked up and saw me watching. He smiled, lips moving silently behind the glass, but I couldn't hear a word. I stumbled back, grabbed the knife again, and finally called the police. My voice shook as I gave them my address. They told me to stay put, keep the doors locked, and that they'd send someone right away. I turned off the lights and curled up by the dining table, phone at my feet, eyes darting to the clock every few seconds. I don't know how much time passed before a dull, heavy thud slammed into the front door, like someone had thrown something solid at it. I nearly dropped the knife. I held my breath, praying for sirens. At last, I heard them, sharp, urgent wails echoing from the corner of the street. I scrambled to the window and saw red and blue lights flash over my front yard. The white van peeled away so fast its tires screeched against the asphalt. A cop knocked on my door, and I somehow managed to unlock it, my voice trembling as I let them in. They looked around, asked me questions, then checked the bag outside. Inside were a few empty plastic bottles and a blank scrap of paper, nothing else. One of the officers patted my shoulder. "Next time, if anything like this happens, don't hesitate. Call 911 right away." I nodded, wanting to answer, but my throat felt blocked. Not a word came out. They checked every room to make sure no one was hiding, double-checked my windows and doors, and then finally left. I sat alone on the couch, while the TV kept playing the movie I'd forgotten about. People on screen were laughing like everything was fine, but I couldn't even force a smile. I didn't fall asleep until dawn, wrapped up in the living room blanket. The paper bag ended up in the trash, but the van's tire tracks stayed at the end of my driveway 4 days, only fading after the next rain washed them away. One cold night, I just wanted something simple to eat. I drove around a few blocks and finally pulled into a little diner I go to sometimes. It's never crowded, the food's decent, and the quiet suits me just fine. When I walked in, there were maybe 3 tables occupied. The owner's wife was behind the counter, wiping glasses while watching TV. I picked a 2-seater by the wall, ordered a cheeseburger and a hot bowl of soup. On nights like that, all I wanted was something warm in my stomach before heading home to curl up under a blanket. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to kill time while I waited. The TV in the background droned with muffled news. I figured it'd be an ordinary night eat, pay, leave, nothing more. The food came fast. The burger was steaming, the bun toasted just right, cheese melting beautifully. I bit in, then froze when the chair across from me scraped out. Someone sat down. Not a waiter, not anyone I knew. He looked young, wore a dark coat with the hood still up, and he didn't say a word. No menu, no drink, nothing in front of him. Just eyes locked on me. I set down my burger, confused. No smile, no expression, just that stare. I asked if he'd taken the wrong seat. He didn't answer, just said quietly, "Do you like this place?" His tone wasn't threatening, more like he was continuing a conversation I'd already been part of. I looked around. The other tables were still full, people eating as if nothing strange was happening. I told him I didn't know him, asked if he needed help. He said, "You come here a lot, same table, same order." That froze me. I did come here often, but I'd never noticed if I always picked the same spot. I asked if he was following me. He gave a small laugh, the first flicker of movement in his face. It wasn't a friendly laugh, more like he found the question amusing. "Every time you walk in," he said, "you glance at the clock, then at the lady behind the counter, before you sit down." Steam from my soup fogged my glasses a little, and for some reason, that tiny detail made me uneasy in a way fear doesn't quite describe. I thought about standing up and leaving, but my legs felt too heavy, like something was pinning me to the floor. He kept talking. "You sat in your car 2 minutes before coming in. You checked your phone 6 times, 3 times Instagram, twice the weather, once the map." I had no idea how he could know that. My phone hadn't left my side. He wasn't bragging, wasn't even trying to scare me. He said it like he was giving the forecast. I finally asked, "Who the hell are you?" My whole body tensed. Nobody knew about that. He'd said some cruel things. I didn't want to hear them, so I stormed out, paid what I owed, left him there. I never told anyone. He didn't answer directly. "Remember last winter," he said. "You sat here with your dad, you two fought. You left him with the bill and walked out." I swallowed hard. He leaned closer slightly. "Your dad slipped that night. Nobody helped him. He dragged himself to the car, drove home, almost wrecked on the way." I couldn't speak. I didn't know if that was true, but how would this stranger know at all? He tapped the table lightly with one finger. "You ever feel like what you do has no consequences? Like you hurt someone, but as long as you don't think about it, it just disappears?" I set my spoon down. My chest was a mess of anger, shame, questions I couldn't form. Then he stood, hood still up, chair left askew. "You should go now," he said. "Not because of me. Because what you need to face isn't here." And he walked out. No one stopped him. No one even looked his way. For a second, I thought maybe no one else could see him at all. When I glanced back around, the other tables were empty, the counter was deserted. The windows showed only black, deeper than night should ever be, like the whole world had shrunk to just this diner. I don't know how long I sat there before I went to pay. Behind the counter stood a young clerk I'd never seen. He looked up, asked, "Which table?" "The one by the wall, 2-seater," I said. He nodded, rang it up, then added, "You came in alone, right?" I froze, then nodded. He didn't say anything else. The bell jingled when I left. Outside, the cold wind cut my face as I walked to my car. I kept thinking about that man, how he knew too much, but never tried to hurt me. All he did was remind me. Driving home, I passed a gas station, and suddenly felt the urge to call my dad. I pulled up his contact, stared at Dad on the screen, hovered over it for a long moment before finally pressing dial. It rang 3 times before he picked up, voice rough. I didn't tell him anything about what happened. I just asked if he'd eaten, told him I'd visit next weekend and bring his favorite wings. He chuckled, asked if I'd suddenly grown a conscience. I laughed too, but didn't answer. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. No strange sounds. No one sitting across from me. Just a cold burger and a bowl of soup with a thin film on top, waiting on the table in the dream I didn't finish. I spent 45 days on that farm, mostly picking tomatoes, hauling tools, and patching up fences. Those were hot, dry days, the kind where time felt stuck inside a squeaky old fan that kept spinning, but never pushed out any air. We were up at 6 every morning, in the fields until noon, when the boss's wife would drive up in her grey truck with lunch, a roast beef sandwich, an apple, and a can of iced tea. Then back to work until sundown. The land was so quiet that even the birds seemed to stay away, and sometimes the only way we recognized each other was by the smell of our sweat. That's when Roy showed up. At least, that's what he said his name was. Tall guy, didn't talk much, always a beat behind when it came to eating. He hadn't come in the boss's truck like the rest of us, just walked up one day with mud on his shoes that didn't match the dirt here. He carried a black canvas bag and waited by the dorm until someone let him in. The boss didn't ask for papers, didn't make him sign anything. He was just there all of a sudden, working, eating, showering, sleeping with us like he belonged. But there were things. For one, he wouldn't take a bunk, said the snoring was too much, so he moved into the barn. We laughed, called him soft, but honestly, we were glad. His silence wasn't the kind that makes you feel peaceful. It was the kind that pressed on you. One night I got up for water and saw the barn light on through a crack in the boards. The place should have been dark, but the bulb inside was swinging, yellow and weak. I walked out there, and the air felt wrong, like the whole yard was holding its breath. Roy was sitting on the floor among a pile of tools, his back to me. He didn't move, didn't twitch, didn't even shift his weight. I watched for a long time, waiting for him to scratch his head or turn. Nothing. I went back inside. Matt, a kid from Arizona, started whispering about Roy the next week. Said he'd seen him up at 4 in the morning, walking the edge of the fields, talking to himself under the water tower. We laughed at him, but Matt didn't really laugh back. By the 3rd week, the police were looking for someone. The boss's wife called, told us to stay away from the brush behind the farm. A woman was missing. They gave us her description, asked if we'd seen anything. I shook my head, so did Matt, but I remembered Tuesday night. After dinner, me and Matt had been smoking outside when Roy walked past carrying a bag, heading straight toward the brush. We thought he was just finding a spot to take a piss. We didn't tell anyone. 2 days later, the cops came through in a white patrol car, asking questions. Roy wasn't there. The boss said he'd gone home for a family business. Then, like nothing happened, he came back, no questions, no explanations. Just slipped into the dorm at night instead of the barn. I lay awake listening to him turn over in bed, thinking about how he'd said the place was too loud. Something about it didn't add up. On my last night there, Roy handed me a cigarette. Asked how the work was. I said it was fine. He stared at me for a second, like he was weighing something, then said, "Once you leave, don't come back. Not goodbye, not a joke, more like an order." Months later, I saw the missing woman's case on the news. Still no body, no evidence. They called it unsolved. Maybe a runaway, maybe worse. Nothing tied Roy to it. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that barn glowing in the dark, Roy's back rigid in the shadows, and those quiet eyes when he looked at me. They never caught him. Nothing ever proved he did anything. Yet I can't shake the feeling that the light in that barn was never meant for me to see.